Okie dokie. It is time to go through the stack of books that I stare at every night, wishing that I was already reading them, because that's what happens every month. I'm doing pretty good at going through my own physical TBR that I already have. I didn't. One of these I ordered this month, but I had wanted it for a really long time. So it feels fair. Anyways, okay, so next month, I feel like I'm slacking on big fat fantasy books, so getting back into that. Got a couple of thickies next month, and it's all really good stuff. Let's do it. So the first one is nonfiction. I was maybe gonna try to get this done this month, but the autobiography of Malcolm X is thick, small typeset, a lot of detail, and I don't want to read through it really quickly. So that's taking me a while. So this is getting pushed to next month, which is fine because it's something to look forward to. It's Jane Against the World by Karen Blumenthal. I read the first chapter of this, and apparently there is a documentary on HBO about one of the groups that's in the beginning of this book. So that'll be fun to have something to watch afterwards. But this is a book about the history of women's reproductive rights in America. Starts in like the 70s and it goes through Roe v. Wade and all of that, and just kind of dives into the fighting the good fight. So that's going to be a blast. I keep saying that I'm definitely starting to trend towards really going hard on nonfiction geared at women and queer and trans people, especially in healthcare. So, check. This is from several months ago when I read too many books about death and decided to postpone this one, space things out a little bit. It's The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy, and I haven't read any Tolstoy yet. Obviously, this looks more approachable than a lot of his books, even though it's about death. This part of the blurb is what really interests me. It says, this short novel was the artistic culmination of a profound spiritual crisis in Tolstoy's life, a 9-year period following the publication of Anna Karenina, during which he wrote not a word of fiction. A thoroughly absorbing and at times terrifying glimpse into the abyss of death, it is also a strong testament to the possibility of finding spiritual salvation. Which, like, spiritual salvation does not interest me, but I do get curious sometimes about people's thought process around it. So we'll see. It's going to be love or hate, I'm sure, as all classics are for me. Typically hate, but I can do it. It's a little over 100 pages, so even if I hate it, I really want to try to make myself finish this one. We've got Brandon Sanderson making a comeback on my TBR. The Well of Ascension is the second book in the Mistborn series. I loved the first one. I cried at the end. I think I gave it 5 stars, maybe 4.5. But I don't know. It's one of those things where you love it and still it just somehow keeps getting pushed for more recent finds when it comes to your TBR. So there's no good reason that I didn't read it sooner. Oh my god, this one's really long. It's almost 800 pages. We're doing it. Basically, this general storyline so far is sort of about taking down the people at the top, exposing them for what they are, but it's also got sort of like Ocean's 11 fantasy vibes in the sense that they gather a group of people all who have very different talents. And so, of course, they have very different personalities, very different goals, motivations, but they are all working together to bring down the man. There's a character for everybody in here. I definitely think that one of the side characters in here is probably in my top 5 or 10 characters. I would really have to think about that. Maybe top 5. I don't know. I really like him. But yeah, it's a cool magic system. It's good character building. It's like, it feels, sometimes I want a fantasy novel that feels like I'm putting in the time to like really dig deep into that world, because that's the fun part about fantasy for me. But it still has to be approachable and not uber confusing. And this checks all of that. Like, well, sorry, Mistborn, the first book, did. So I assume that this will. But we'll see. I'm excited to continue the storyline because holy cow, the end of Mistborn was, if you've read it, you know. It was just really a doozy. Okay, next, I'm so excited about this one because this is a very specific rabbit hole that I've been wanting to dive down. And this is the beginning of that journey for me. It's The Tudor Secret by Christopher Gortner. And this, in short, is a Tudor era murder mystery. I have been becoming fascinated with the Tudor era because it just seems like a thing that's not real, right? Like everybody's just going around chopping everybody's heads off. And that was just real life. That was just the reality of things. That is mind-blowing to me. And I really want to sit with it for a bit. So I found a list on Goodreads of different Tudor era books and Tudor era murder mystery. Honestly, sign me up. Okay, so it's like an orphan that's brought up by a powerful family and then is brought to court. Then he gets sent on a mission. Double agent. I see the word double agent. Dark plot. Just all really good murder mystery words on the back of this. So even if it's not good, I think I'm gonna like it. We'll see. This one I saw, I don't know how I found it. I didn't hear anybody talk about it. It just like came up through browsing, and that was last year. And I finally ordered it and I am dying to read it. It's The Wolf Den by Elodie Harper. So this is set in Pompeii, which already so cool. It's about a woman who ends up having to work in a brothel because of just what happens to her and just the bond that she forms with everybody else who works there and what the cost of freedom is and her journey to get out of there. It just sounds like a really cool setting to me. It sounds like it's going to address some really good topics, and I don't know. Also, I'm obsessed with this cover. I just really love it a lot. And I don't know why, but the fact that it's longer makes me more optimistic about it, just because I feel like this is a story, like this is a type of story that you should dive deep on. Like if you told me you were going to address women's issues like that and try to build a really amazing Pompeii setting in like 250 pages, I don't think I would try it. So I'm actually excited that this is a bit of a chunker. To continue on my education of the mistreatment of women in medicine, my previous education just being my own life, it's sad that I bet 99% of women who watch this will be like, yeah, me too. But Unwell Women by Elinor Cleghorn, I'm very excited to read this. Misdiagnosis and Myth in a Man-Made World is this little bit right here. And yeah, it's just about women not being listened to in medicine and being misdiagnosed because people diagnose men and women differently. It gets me very excited to look at the index of this guy because, part 1 is ancient Greece. Wandering wombs, possessed and polluting, under her skin, on her nerves, feeling pain, contagious pleasures, bleeding mad. Oh, I bet that's about periods back in the day, which would be so interesting. And then part 2 is late 19th century, 1940s. That is going to be so hard to read. I guarantee it. I would not have done well in the 40s, 50s, 60s, any of those times. And 1945 to present, Public Health, Private Pain, Mother's Little Helpers, Our Bodies, Ourselves. I don't know, man. I have very high hopes for this. I think this is going to be difficult to read, but at the same time, I won't be able to put it down. So excited for this one. Then I'm going to scroll through and kind of read the things that are going to become available on Libby. That will probably end up being, it's kind of hard to tell because things show up early, but I can tell you what I'm not going to get to this month that I already have loaned, which would be The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. Okay, so this one, I don't fully understand what it's about, and it sounds like something that I normally would not gravitate towards at all. But my understanding is that this series, it's about rich people, which is typically not a thing that I like to read about. It's fiction, and I think it's just about different people's lives, and maybe there's some romance involved, but maybe there's a lot of romance involved, who knows. This could literally be a romance book and I'm just unaware of it. But the reason that I'm drawn to this, because I've just been eyeballing it since I started reading, so I'm just going to give it a go since it's free on Libby. I can't get over the cover, first of all. I love the covers for this whole series. The other thing is, my understanding is that each book focuses on a different lead character, and I don't know if they're all related or if they're just in business together or what, but that way of organizing the series sounds super interesting to me, and I just really want to try it for mainly that reason. This is around 11 hours, but typically I speed audiobooks up because there's a lot of pausing, so it'll probably be even shorter than that. Things that will soon be available. Babel is going to be available soon. This one I'm nervous for because I think it's going to be a love or hate thing. It's called A Short Walk Through the Wide World by Westerbeke? Douglas Westerbeke. Okay, so this starts in Paris in 1885 with a 9-year-old girl who, it's so weird. The blurb makes it sound like if this is not done well, it'll be a disaster, but if it is, it'll be amazing. Basically, it says, a spoiled, stubborn 9-year-old girl comes across a wooden puzzle ball on her walk home from school. She tosses it over the fence, only to find it in her backpack that evening. Days later, at the family dinner table, she starts to bleed to death. When medical treatment only makes her worse, she flees to the outskirts of the city where she realizes that it is this very act of movement that keeps her alive. So begins her lifelong journey on the run from her condition, which won't allow her to stay anywhere for longer than a few days, nor return to a place she's already been. So basically, she just goes all around the world just to stay alive. And I'm just curious because I have things in my head that it sounds like this will be addressing, and they are making me curious. If you look at the categories on Libby, it's under fiction, literature, thriller, and fantasy. So I don't know. This just sounds like a really interesting hodgepodge of stuff, and I heard somebody say good things about it, and it just has me so curious. I have to try it. Ooh, yeah. Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. Yeah, this is about Henry VIII. So, enough said. It is long. It's 20 hours, 23 hours. I'm gonna love this. And I know that it's a show, which I don't think I've seen. I've watched like most of the Tudor era things that are popular, but I don't think I've actually watched Wolf Hall. So another thing that will be fun to watch afterwards. These days, I honestly only watch something if it's because I read the book and I want to compare the movie. It's like the only time I watch anything now. I've got a nonfiction book about ADD that will be coming up soon called Scattered Minds by Gabor Maté, MD. The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. The Radium Girls by Kate Moore, which everybody loves. And actually, I heard people at work talking about this recently. This is basically about women who, well, I don't know if they were women or if they were young, but they were painting things like watches and clocks with a substance that used radium. And it just talks about how that obviously messed them up big time. And I'm sure it leads to no justice for them, and talking about that because God bless America. But I haven't heard a single bad thing about this book, and I've heard a lot of people talk about it. So very, very high hopes for that. Oh, Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. I have some really big audiobooks that are coming up soon. Some good stuff coming up. Some very good stuff coming up. And I'm excited for every single one of these, honestly. Tolstoy, I'm like nervous about, but all the others, I'm pumped. So I feel super confident that there's going to be at least a couple of 5-star reads. Very, very confident. Let me know if you've already read any of these. If anybody has any books that are kind of in the same vein as Unwell Women or Jane versus the World, please let me know. Honestly, also, if you know of any good, like, Tudor era books. Trying to build a collection here. That's all I got. I'm gonna enjoy the snowy day outside, snuggle up with a book, do some laundry. I hope you like what you're reading. I'll see you in the next video, guys.